So I'm going to bring up our first speaker. This is a series of talks about eco-districts, concepts being applied across the globe. And so I'm going to introduce Nadia Yen, who is the Director of Green Development for East Harbour at First Gulf. Nadia Yen is a licensed professional engineer in Ontario with her current role as Director of Green Development with First Gulf. Nadia has over a decade of experience in sustainable engineering, design, and construction, and is a skilled project manager, having completed several concurrent large-scale sustainability construction projects from analysis to implementation and monitoring in district-wide high-rise multi-use buildings. Let's welcome Nadia Yen.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm very excited to be here to show you guys what we've been working on. East Harbour is a project in Toronto, in Canada. We are going through the Eco Districts Protocol certification. So we're one of the cohorts currently right now. We are very proud of what we were able to accomplish over the last 3 years. So in my presentation, I'm just going to show you guys sort of who we are, where we came from, and what our master plan looks like. Going a little bit over what Toronto represents, Toronto region will exceed 9.4 million people by 2041. That's a pretty aggressive growth. East Harbour will provide a new district for people to live, work, and play. Currently in the city of Toronto, it's very densely populated. We do have an employment precinct that spans right in the center of the city of Toronto. And what we're trying to do with East Harbour is bring another employment precinct on the southeast piece of the city that has not been developed and is currently historical industrial uses. And so if you just take your eyes to the screen here, on the left side, that's where East Harbour is in the context of the city of Toronto. So we are on the southeast end. We are a 62-acre development. And historically, in 1953, it was old coal gasification plant, and it was also used to manufacture soaps. Unilever Brothers used to own the site, and there was lots of industrial processes that changed hands over the years, but primarily it was soaps and detergents. And so where our master plan began, about, I guess it was 7 or 8 years ago, the partners purchased the land, and there are developers who have two streams. One stream is called Great Gulf Homes, it's all residential, and our other stream is called First Gulf. And they have been doing commercial and industrial uses. So more recently, it's been more commercial office towers and things like that in the city of Toronto because we need that type of density. But what they're really good at, and what all the partners were good at, was building malls. And so in the city of Toronto right now, on the left side, the city's bound by 2 malls, one on the west, one on the north, and there's nothing on the east. So that was the great idea at the time, a shopping mall. And so they took a step back after they started having conversations with people in the communities, the city, and came up with a blue sky idea. What if we transform this space, this 62-acre in the heart of the city that's not really accessible right now, into something that's greater, something that could be a master planned district, and something that will be a legacy for us and for the city of Toronto, somewhere where people can go work, play, live, and enjoy being a Torontonian, and further defining what that means. And so where we are today, over the last 3 years, the team has been working very hard to rezone the lands as commercial. So we have a 62-acre master plan. It consists of 38 acres, which is owned currently by First Gulf and other partners. And on the northeast there, that is the City of Toronto lands, which is also being included in our master plan. And to the north of that is currently a BMW dealership. That was also a historical site that was an adaptive reuse. And so as you can see from our master plan, we have some amazing amenities around us. We have the Don River, which is not being celebrated in Toronto. In fact, it's not really celebrated at all. You can't really see the Don River. It's hidden by roads if you're walking in all the path networks beside it. There's only new developments that have really started coming up, like Corktown Commons, which is that park on the left side of the Don River, that is allowing all the residents to see what the Don River has to connect us to a little bit more to nature and to water, which Torontonians haven't historically celebrated. And so this is just an outline, sort of a 3D view looking into the City of Toronto, what East Harbour is. So 62 acres of empty land and 13 million square feet of office planned, with maybe perhaps 2 levels of retail, some sort of path network, 70,000 jobs at full build out, which is fairly significant for the City of Toronto. I know a lot of people who are trying to be entrepreneurs and start businesses, but they can't find office space, no home to call their own. So this will present a great opportunity for the City of Toronto to have a new employment precinct. And the build out is about 15 to 20 years. So after all that master planning and having a general vision, how do we actually achieve it? How do we make this happen? And what do we want this to look like? And so our team has taken a step back and really taken a look at what we want to do in terms of sustainability. And in 2015, with our consultants, WSP, we created a sustainability charter. And basically what this means is we want to think smart. We want to think about those questions that is going to lead us to a smart development, something that's going to be useful for people, that's something that's going to be built for the people. And we want to make everything adaptable and resilient. It's a pretty big undertaking considering we're starting from scratch and an industrial, very contaminated land. So every decision made needs to build long-term value, prioritize human health, and enhance it. Make it a more desirable destination for people. Right now it's pretty desolate in the City of Toronto. And enable access, so give multiple modes of transportation or access to the site. And we believe that carbon emissions are a long-term liability, so our goal is to get to carbon neutrality. Technology must be integrated and state-of-the-art. We need to think about innovation different. We don't necessarily want to look for the technology that is proven. We want to look and be a demonstration project to show and prove that things can be done smart and things can actually get you to where you need to be, but also there might be a financial benefit to it. You know, access to nature is becoming more increasingly valuable, and we are seeing the linkages between human health and access to nature. And resiliency is a huge pillar for us. And diversity and transparency really do drive value. And so where we are right now, the site was acquired in 2012. We've been doing some pre-development activities, got our zoning, created our sustainability charter in 2015. Now we are looking at the eco-district implementation. And I've had a lot of questions as to why eco-districts, why did we look at this protocol? And the answer is, it brought everything that we wanted together. We wanted to get those questions that we are striving for and bring them to the surface. You know, have those conversations with other stakeholders in our community we would have never otherwise had. And the Eco-Districts protocol has really enabled us to have new relationships with various sectors that typically developers don't get. And so the rest of the timeline just shows you where we're at. We're pretty aggressive in our timeline. We are breaking ground on our first building, which is an adaptive reuse of the old soap factory building. And we're trying to do all of this with a circular economy approach in mind as best as we possibly can, which is not really common for construction practices. People don't really look at the construction and development in a sustainable way. So our initial occupancy is sometime in 2021. And that's also correlating to a transit hub, which I will get into in the next slides. And so we are also trying to follow Toronto and build out our master plan in a Toronto way for the Toronto people and defining what that means. So understanding that the City of Toronto has participated in C40, 90 cities across the globe, and creating a climate leadership agreement. So we are trying to decrease citywide carbon by 80% by 2050 versus our 1990 state. And so the city has pledged to increase renewable and district energy generation across the city, which means that the city is providing us with great support that is not very common for building out development that's privately led. And so this is just a rendering of how we're envisioning what some of the public spaces will look like, the public realm. And what we're trying to do is envision a brighter tomorrow by integrating equity, climate change, and resiliency. And so for us, what does that mean? integrating arts and culture, making everything human scale, making it something that's interesting and inviting for people to visit, not just people who are there and employed in the areas, but also a destination for visitors globally. One thing that happened last year that really helped to animate the site and activate it and bring people or the City of Toronto into a derelict building was the EDIT Festival. It was a festival that was Design Innovation Technologies, and it was really quite fascinating to see how the city transformed when this was happening. There was a lot of different innovations that happened. For example, there was a lot of different installations at this festival that focused on sustainability and what that meant, and trying to educate the general public. So this is just one of the examples, Design for Pollution. Someone created an art installation around what was one of the soap silos, letters to the mayor. So it was a bunch of letters that were written from the general public to the mayor, talking about sustainability and environmental protection and things like that. This is an LED forest that was pretty remarkable. It displayed rates of taxation for low-income, middle-class, and high-income households. So visitors could change the display using a touch screen monitor to see how economic policy impacts social equity. And so focusing back on the eco-districts, our equity-related priorities, we've focused a lot, now that we're sort of in this ideation and design concept stage, on mobility, economic opportunities, and what that means, green space, public realm spaces, creating a great space for the people, and healthy working environments. And nothing draws people better to a place than sort of buildings and public realm spaces they feel good going to and feel good when they leave and they want to revisit again. So we've been looking at access to nature and how human scale affects how people see things and how they feel when they visit the district. This is our enabling infrastructure plan. So one of the really exciting things about our district that we are developing is there is a massive transit hub that's going through our site that's not there today. It is funded. It is actually happening. So we will have pretty much all modes of transportation going to our master plan, which is very exciting. We will have LRT, streetcars, GO Train, which is our long-distance train in Toronto, and it will connect us to all the surrounding municipalities. Beyond that, we're looking at active mobility and the different type of innovations that is happening in this space. This is just an example of the Martin Goodman multi-use trail that runs along the south side of the City of Toronto. So we're trying to tap into that and give people a safe mode of transportation rather than biking on city streets, which is not really retrofitted right now for safe bicycling in most areas of the City of Toronto. Perhaps e-scooters, e-bikes, you name it, we're kind of looking at it to see how we can connect people better into East Harbour. Year-round programming, so recognizing that we live in a city that's very cold in the winter and has very beautiful summers, and all of the seasons in between spring and fall allow us to do these really great cultured festivals. So we want to celebrate that and create a microclimate to be able to do that. And so going back into the how, we're doing some analysis around microclimates, looking at wind patterns, looking at the human body temperature and perceived thermal comfort states. This just shows a quick modeling analysis around if we were to build this out, this doesn't currently exist, but this is our master plan, where the massive wind tunnels will be. And what we recognize is that's all the public spaces that we're suggesting to put in. So there are some building modifications, there's some architectural design elements that we can do, and we need to think about now before we get into the actual concept of each of our buildings in detail, of how we can mitigate this and create a great space. And this is just some more renderings on, to the top right there, you'll see it's like creating a living neighborhood, but in the City of Toronto, everybody goes below the grade in the employment precinct areas. It is called our path network. I personally love it, but it's because it protects me from inclement weather. It protects my shoes from getting salty in the winter when I'm running between meetings and things like that. So, but what it doesn't do is it doesn't allow me to get outside and explore the city, the green spaces, and connect more to nature. So what we're proposing is to create a path network that's microclimate designed with the human thermal comfort in mind, and so connecting indoor and outdoor spaces at grade level rather than putting everyone below grade. And then also green corridors through the City of Toronto would be really great. And just touching a little bit on climate protection, because I could talk about what we're planning to do with our district for a very long time. But from the climate protection perspective, we're targeting a net zero carbon and net zero energy, and in the next 10 to 15 years, net zero energy ready. So what does that mean for us? We're exploring areas of microgrids, for example, district energy, circular economy around waste, and trying to find opportunities of reuse for the various materials that we'll be using on site. And from the perspective of resilience, we are part of a very large Donmouth revitalization project in the City of Toronto. This is allowing the entire south side, or southeast side of the City of Toronto to be re-envisioned into a new space for the City of Toronto. Right now, it's all industrial and it floods. So this Waterfront Toronto has put a plan together, and we are part of that flood protection. So what that also allows us to be enabled by is having permanent flood protection on our site. And so coming back to the focus, what can we do now to design this in a smart way? We're asking all of these questions about equity, climate protection, resilience, arts and culture, placemaking, so that we're thinking about it now and it's not an afterthought after we implement our master plan and after it's all designed. We're trying to think about it now. And that's not really common for developers to do. Thank you very much for your time.